In front of the majestic backdrop of the Rocky Mountains, the city of Denver has mushroomed into a thriving metropolis. Sports plays a big part of Denver's magic, and today it's gymnastics in the spotlight, featuring 1988 Olympic all-around finalist Lance Ringnold. Brandy Johnson finished best among the all-around competitors at the Olympic Games. She's one of America's best. The top gymnast from the Big Eight is Patrick Kirksey. He finished first in the all-around competition at the recently held Big Eight Championships. The winner of the 1989 mixed pairs event was Wendy Bruce. She teamed up with Li Ning of China for an unbeatable combination. And Conrad Vorsinger, currently in 9th place on the national team, is from Stanford and looking to climb in the rankings. Meeting head-to-head today is Margaret Hewlett versus Carol Ulrich. On the men's side, it is Kyle Lozano against Jorge Garcia. It's a sudden death form of competition. The winner advances while the loser goes home. ESPN, the Total Sports Network, and the United States Gymnastics Federation present the 1989 U.S. Challenge. Today it is show number 2. Margaret Hewlett against Carol Ulrich, and on the men's side, Kyle Lozano against Jorge Garcia. Good evening and welcome inside the Denver Coliseum, where this is the second of several Friday nights of gymnastics here on ESPN. Hello everyone, I'm Leandra Riley, and we have 6 matchups in the first round for the women, 6 matchups for the first round in the men. It's a tournament style of competition. Let's take a look at the brackets and see what has happened so far. In our first show, Brandy Johnson was our winner. She will face the winner of today's show between Margaret Hewlett and Carol Ulrich. On the men's side, the winner was Lance Ringnold. He has survived to face either Kyle Lozano or Jorge Garcia, depending on who wins today in our second telecast. And right now, let me introduce to you Olympic gold medalist Bart Connor. And Bart, we've had one show already, Brandy and Lance advanced. What did you think of the first show?
Well, I think the format is very interesting because the athletes, even though the favorites are Lance and Brandy, they're pretty nervous because they know if they make a mistake in the early rounds, they could be bounced right out of the competition.
All right, let's talk about the women. Margaret Hewlett and Carol Ulrich, 2 tough competitors going head-to-head.
This will be an interesting battle because Carol's the local girl, and I'm sure she'll be inspired being in front of the hometown crowd. Margaret is a big vaulter, and that's the first event. She'll need a good score there if she's going to win.
All right, if she does, it might be an uphill battle for Carol. Let's go over to the men's side. Kyle Lozano against Jorge Garcia, 2 youngsters.
And both of these guys are on the USGF Senior Elite Developmental Team. They'll be members of the U.S. national team in the future, so I'll be interested to see if they can handle the pressure here at this big international meet.
Of course, what's around the corner is Lance Ringnold, because whoever survives here will face Lance in a later telecast show. We'll be back with this matchup, however. Stay with us here at the Denver Coliseum. Welcome back to the 1989 U.S. Gymnastics Challenge here in Denver, Colorado. We are at the Coliseum, and we are going to begin with men's gymnastics. We are following the Olympic rotation. You are looking at Kyle Lozano. Again, he is matched up against Jorge Garcia. Floor exercise is the first rotation. Earlier, we had a chance to speak with Kyle Lozano. We spoke with him about this U.S. Challenge and how he feels about it. When you're standing there ready to start your floor exercise, and the judge holds up the green flag. What's going through your mind for those few seconds while you're waiting for that green flag?
Mainly relaxing, not really thinking about the whole routine, just taking one, past one at a time, and just mainly relaxing, because that's the trouble I have. I can't relax.
And he was very nervous during that interview. His toe was tapping and his fingers were fidgeting. So I think Kyle Lozano is actually a little bit more relaxed on the floor than he is in the television situation.
Would you welcome Kyle Lozano?
He is the youngest of 3 children, was born in Redwood City, California, currently lives in Sunnydale.
He trains at the Stanford Gymnastics Club with Sadao Hamada, who's also the coach at Stanford University. Good, clean mount. That's called a full-in pike back. Good landing. Straddle jump, punch front, good combinations. Once again, there's the flared circles that we've seen many of the gymnasts perform. That's called a pancake.
Named for that famous gymnast Pancake, or because he looks like one?
The trick is certainly to get all the way flat, and it isn't all that easy. Round off, whip, whip. Nice little combination for a third tumbling pass. Keep in mind that the gymnasts have to cover all of the floor area, so generally what you see is 2 diagonal passes back and forth, and then 1 side pass, as we just saw, and then he'll cut back across the opposite diagonal, covering the rest of the area in 50 to 70 seconds with a clean tuck double back. Good routines for such a young man.
Kyle Asano, just 17 years of age, completing his floor exercise performance, and you saw the big sigh of relief that he gave to his coaches as he exited the podium.
He had a very good idea, and he mentioned in the interview that he's going to take 1 pass at a time. I think that's key, because you can't let an early mistake get you in trouble, so he just decided to focus on each element individually, and I think it was very successful for him. It's a good attitude to approach on the floor exercise. Round off here, back handspring, nice high tuck double back. That's a strong dismount for such a young man, and he did it very easily. Here's the third pass, round off, whip, whip. Everybody's looking for something different, especially on that third pass, because the other 3 passes tend to be standardized, but he found a unique way of fulfilling the requirement of covering the rest of the area.
If there's any flaw that you could find in it as he receives a 9.3, it would have to be maybe some form breaks.
Yeah, there were some slight form breaks, and of course the judges are really keying on those because all of these competitors are very strong. It's going to be the little things that make the difference here.
Again, his challenger is Jorge Garcia. He knows the score to beat is now 9.30. The way this U.S. Challenge works, you must compete in the all-around. After 6 rotations, the gymnast with the highest cumulative score, that means all 6 apparatus figured into the total, will be the one who survives to compete in the next round of competition.
Jorge is originally from Puerto Rico, but he lives in Houston. And he did a nice mount there. It's a half in, 1 and 3 in the tuck position to a rollout, and then of course he comes back across the diagonal with a 1.5 twist punch front. And look at the flares there. Tremendous speed, great elevation above the floor. Up to pirouettes, to a handstand, and down to splits. That was an excellent combination. So far, that's the best part of his exercise.
At first, I was a little concerned going into the flares. I thought, uh-oh, he didn't get all the way down to the splits, but it was a setup for those flares.
Oh, he can't walk in that handstand. Although it is no longer a requirement, you don't need to show a press to a handstand. If you make bobbles like that in some basic elements, the judges are certainly going to downgrade the exercise because you can't give away points on the easy things. You have to hit those right because the difficult tumbling passes are where the chances of making mistakes are a little stronger. And a full punch front, not a really strong dismount. He needs a little more difficulty in his floor, but he's still very young. He's on the senior development team for the U.S. program, so he'll develop into being a little bit more of a powerful tumbler as the years go on.
He is just 18 years of age as we take another look at his performance.
Round off back handspring, little sloppy, but that's a half in, 1 and 3. You can see he rolls out, stands up with a half turn, and then he comes back across the diagonal. There's no question that this is a great part of his exercise. The tumbling wasn't really powerful, but this stuff is great, and this is world-class stuff. Flares with tremendous elevation, really good speed, and he cranks them right up to a pirouette handstands. Here's where he got in trouble, though. This is important to hold this right here. Straddle press to a handstand. You can't give away the easy points as he did there. I did that a lot when I was a young gymnast as well, though, so he'll improve a great deal.
So there's hope, Jorge, because Bart outgrew it. You see his score, 9.15. Right now, Kyle Asano has the lead over Jorge, 9.3 to 9.15. We'll be back. Welcome back to the 1989 U.S. Challenge. This is show number 2, Kyle Asano against Jorge Garcia. Right now, Kyle Asano has the lead by 0.15 after 1 rotation. but it's who's in front after 6 rotations that matters. Right now, let's introduce you to the women. It'll be Margaret Hewlett against Carol Ulrich. They are going to vault first. Again, they are following the Olympic order of competition, vaulting being the first event. Women vault twice. It is the better of the 2 vaults that will count. Margaret Hewlett is 14 years old. Al Fong is her coach.
She trains at the Great American Gymnastics Express, and she says that vault is her favorite event, so a good way to start. Nice job. That's the same vault we saw Brandy Johnson do. She was a little looser in the air, but it was very well done. This is the Yurchenko full. Bent her arms on the rebound of the horse, which caused her to over-rotate a little bit. She'll need to block a little bit better on the horse. You can see here as she goes back into the horse, she reaches back and her arms are bent right there. If she could get a little straighter arms, she could get a little stronger push, and she might hang that up in the air a little longer and be able to stick the landing.
Her score for that first vault was 9.65.
She has to be pleased with that because this is only the 3rd or 4th time she used this vault in competition. It's still one of the toughest vaults being done in the world right now. Let's see if she can get a little better block. That was the one. How about that?
Oh,
you could tell right from the pre-flight that she got a good solid block off the horse, and she hung it up in the air and good landing. Watch the difference on this one now as compared to the first. When she reaches back right there, see, she gets a good solid push, stays really upright in the air, good clean form, well done.
Fine job by the 14-year-old high schooler, or 8th grader, I should say, from Lee Summit, Missouri.
Once again, good block, boom. Nice clean form in the air. Those are fun to do like that.
Needless to say, it was the second vault that scored better than the first. Again, her first vault received a 9.65. There you see the numbers for her second vault, 9.8. Again, that is the number that this lady will have to beat, Carol Ulrich. She is also going to compete on vault. We had a chance to speak with her earlier. She too has never been involved in a single elimination type of format and spoke with us about that.
Well, that's a really different form. I've never competed like this, and I really don't think anyone else has either. And it's going to be exciting. It's going to be a lot of pressure because you have to do good to, to move on. And, every event is going to be, like a fight to see who's going to do better. So that's what makes it fun.
Carol is the first gymnast in Colorado history to score a perfect 10 in high school competition. She is obviously a hometown favorite because she hails from Broomfield.
Now the vault that she has signified to the judges that she's going to use is a Sukahara tucked with a full twist. There it is. Oh, that was high. Now it's different than the Yurchenko style of vaults that we've seen from some of the other competitors. This one, she goes straight on to the horse. From the forward position, she does a round off there, tucked back with a full, and great form in the air. This vault used to be worth a perfect 10. Now it's a maximum of a 9.9, but she does it nicely. Good, clean, legs together in the air, and that is tough on a full twisting Sukahara to hold good form while you're flipping and twisting at the same time.
That to me should be a 10 vault, but I'm not in with the people who make those decisions. That to me looks like a very difficult vault. 9.625 is the score she received for that first vault.
So many of the girls are using the Yurchenko style of vaulting, the round-off approach. This is the traditional style of vaulting, and she's so powerful, she can really pull this off. Once again, the same vault. Oh, just a little short on the landing. She was really trying to hang it up in the air and stick that landing, and she just underdid it a little bit.
Coach Bill Ryden.
Once again, good block, nice form in the air. She's looking for the landing right there, and she opens up just a hair early and causes her to take a step forward. She really wanted to stick that.
Where should the hand placement be on the horse?
They do a half turn on. You can see right there her hand should be as square as possible. She's just a little short. She's fighting that landing, but it wasn't there today, and she knew it.
Should it be more on the top side, on the board side? Or
you need to hit on the front side of the horse so you can get a good solid block right there. See, her hands are just barely up to the top of the horse. She's a little lower on that one than she was on the first one, and that caused the step forward.
Judges taking a little bit of time on this second score. The first one, again, she got a 9.625. This one was scored a little bit less at 9.575. Therefore, it is the first vault that will count. Again, Margaret Hewlett, 9.8. Carol Ulrich, 9.625. She's in a little bit of a deficit going into the second rotation. And now you are looking at Jorge Garcia. He is getting ready to compete on the pommel horse. Again, he is up against Kyle Asano.
This young man is really committed to the sport of gymnastics. He says for his hobbies, he likes to watch gymnastics videos. We saw him do great flares on the floor. You can see he can also do very good flares on the horse as well. Did flares up to a handstand. He's working without the pommels. Whoa!
Form breaks, have a seat.
Oh, he was doing a really difficult combination of skills there without the pommels, which is so much more difficult to work on the body of the horse because of the elevation of the pommels are a little bit easier. When you put your hands down on the leather, it's very difficult, and he got into some trouble. Now, of course, the judges will take off a half a point for falling off the exercise, and then he is obligated to pick up where he left off and continue the exercise. Does flares to a handstand on the end. He breaks into this scissors, one of the requirements. Flares again to a handstand and a helicopter pirouette off. That's a nice dismount.
That's very pretty. Too bad he had that major break in the middle.
Watch what happens here. See, he's working without the pommels. And those pommels are about 4.5 inches up, so you have to have really good elevation above the horse. And once you start to lose it in the shoulders and you get low to the horse, you're in trouble. This was a good part of the exercise, though. He does flares right to a handstand as he pirouettes all the way down to the end and continues to pirouette off. That's a beautiful dismount.
Jorge Garcia. Already he was down 0.15 to Kyle Asano. The score for this apparatus, 8.35. Tough break for Jorge Garcia. That does take the pressure off of Kyle Asano. These are two very young gymnasts. Jorge Garcia just 18, Kyle Asano just 17. And this is really great in their development that they're getting this opportunity not only to compete, but to be on television and to experience all of these things.
And they're competing with the pressure of the big guys. Although Lance Ringnold is only 18 years old, he's still one of the top guys in the U.S. Right away, again, trouble on the horse.
That means this meet isn't over yet. The score was 8.35 for Jorge Garcia. So Kyle Asano has now opened the door.
Kyle opened with some flares on the end, and he was traveling up. Looked like he was low in elevation, but we'll have to, oh, he's going to start right over. Because he made a mistake on the opening skill, he can pick up right at the beginning of the exercise as he chose to do. Little form breaks. His pommel rushing down. He's really having to fight. Now that's the kind of mistake that young gymnasts tend to make. He lost concentration because he made a mistake earlier, and he gave up some valuable points on a very easy skill. This is a good format for these guys, though, because it's good pressure, it's a good test. It doesn't affect their national ranking at this stage, and they're all in the developmental stages of the U.S. national team. So he'll learn a great deal from having participated here. Here's the mount. He does the flares. You can see he's working his way in towards the pommels, and he clips his knee on the end of the horse. And once you lose your momentum on the flares, there's not a lot you can do. Right here he does a handstand and a good clean dismount. Good finish, but of course the trouble early in the exercise is going to really hurt his score.
The tough part is with both gymnasts having major falls like that, you really have to stay on top of the deductions. 7.9 the score. Jorge Garcia now leads Kyle Asano. We'll be back. The U.S. Challenge continues here in Denver, Colorado. Welcome back once again. I'm Leandra Riley along with Bart Connor. And the women have completed one rotation. The men have completed two. Let's take a look first at the scoring for the women. Margaret Hewlett, 9.8 to Carol Ulrich's 9.625. The women have just vaulted. Now the men have done two rotations, as I said. It is Kyle Asano against Jorge Garcia. Jorge Garcia leads by 0.3, 17.5 to 17.2. And continuing now with the rotation, the men have moved to the still rings. The women will compete on the uneven parallel bars. First up, Kyle Asano.
This is an important test for these young gymnasts because both of them had trouble in the second event, the pommel horse. It'll be interesting to see and test their mental stability here and see if they can pick it up and carry on from having an early mistake. There's a kip to a cross, good strength move, and a back kip to a handstand. Now you'll find that the younger gymnasts tend to be really good swingers on the rings, but have not yet matured into the physical strength that it takes to be really strong. And you can see there he had some trouble. His handstand is a little weak and he's a little wobbly. But as he gets a little stronger and as he gets a little older, he'll mature into the strength that it takes to be really solid. But you can see, oh, he is really having trouble on those handstands. Front giant. And once again, though, a big swinger, he can do good giants and a good layout double back, but controlling the handstands takes an incredible amount of strength, and he'll just have to mature into that.
And that's really the difference between men's and women's gymnastics, where maturing helps the male gymnast. As they get older, they start peaking in their early 20s. This kid's only 17 years old. His body's physically just not strong enough.
And he really had some trouble there. He did a press. He went up too fast. He was a little loose, lost balance. But once again, the guy can swing like crazy because he just bails right out there with a good body line and a really high layout double back. He'll get a little stronger, and he'll put that together and be a really fine ringman.
Well, this is called still rings. Years ago, I think it was like 40 years ago, it was the flying rings, when the rings used to swing back and forth. And
sometimes you end up doing that. Not on purpose.
That's why they named it still rings, to remind us. 8.65 for Kyle Asano. Again, Jorge Garcia, our next competitor, holds a slight advantage, 0.3. 0.3 of a point over Kyle Asano, and could really distance himself here if he does a fine job.
There's a pull to a front lever. Keeps his body horizontal. Kip to a cross. Presses to a handstand. He is a little weak, but he is significantly stronger than Asano. He's having trouble with the handstands, but where do you see this guy swing? There's that double whippet or Yamawaki. He's having a little trouble controlling the rings, but he told us earlier he was planning to cut a triple back off the rings today. Let's see if he goes for it. No, he doesn't. He's going to do a really nice, clean layout double back and go with consistency. As we mentioned earlier in the show, consistency really is going to be a key to advancing to the further rounds.
That is so important. I think he was right in forgetting the triple back.
That pike position Yamawaki or double whippet, kind of a crazy sounding name, but really interesting looking move. Here he just bails away, really high, clean layout double, and an excellent landing.
He stuck it.
Maybe he'll save the triple for a later round if he advances on.
And he should outscore Kyle Asano. Again, the score for Asano is 8.65. There you see the number for Jorge Garcia, 9.55. So he is widening the gap between himself and Kyle Asano. Right now, Jorge Garcia looks like he's headed to the next round. Right now, we are headed, though, to the uneven parallel bars, where Carol Ulrich is ready to mount. At the U.S. Olympic trials, she finished 15th in the all-around. She's an up-and-comer for the United States program.
Glide kip cast to a full pirouette right off the bat. Good opening moves. Handstand front. Oh, she didn't have the kind of momentum that she really needed to get the height above the bar to make the catch on that straddle front, or Jaeger, as invented by an East German gymnast named Jaeger. She has to traverse bars. She has to work both the high bar and the lower bar. She has to show changes of directions as she did with her mount. And she dismounts with a toe on, front with a half.
Falling off the unevens, major deduction.
Colorado history to score a perfect 10 in high school competition.
Right here, she hops, swings through, and she just really cuts her momentum short. She's low and not close enough. Actually, if she were a little higher, I think she would have rotated into the bar and have been able to catch that. But there's a good cast to a handstand, good straight body position. Giant, a slight bend of the arms, toe on, front with a half dismount in one step.
Now already she trails her competitor, Margaret Hewlett, by .225.
8.85.
I think you heard our public address announcer, Jan Clare, give us the bad news. 8.85 for Carol Ulrich. Although when you add a half a point for falling, it'd be a 9.35, maybe another tenth or two for general impression, and she really has herself a 9.5 routine or better had she stayed on. But that relieves some of the pressure for Margaret Hewlett, who's up now.
She was 12th in the all-around in last year's junior nationals. But she's in with the big girls now, and she got off to a great start on vaulting. Here comes her release move. There's a reverse hecht. Straddle back over to the low bar. She has to traverse the bars, as I mentioned earlier. She can do no more than 5 skills on the high bar, and then she has to get down, do couple of skills on the low bar, and then get back up to the high bar and finish as she did with the giant through to a tuck double back.
Margaret Hewlett responded beautifully to the no-pressure situation. After she saw Ulrich fall off, the monkey was off her back.
She does a good job on this release move. This is the reverse hecht. It's really high. She barely clears the bar, and she does a good job at making the regrasp and straddling back over to the low bar. Giant to the top, good clean line on top. High tuck double back, almost as high as Brandy Johnson's in one little step.
And the number we have for Margaret Hewlett is 9.25. She easily beats the 8.85 of Carol York. Welcome back to the 1989 U.S. Challenge. We are at the halfway point. Kyle Asano trails Jorge Garcia. 27.05 for Jorge Garcia, 25.85 for Kyle Asano. On the women's side, it is Margaret Hewlett over Carol Ulrich, 19.05 to 18.475. And speaking of the women, they are up next on the balance beam. They have already competed on the vault. They've already competed on the uneven parallel bars. And now this is a third of 4 rotations.
A round off back handspring onto the beam. One of the first girls to do that in America was Tracy Talavera. Okay, she's setting up for an acro series. Back handspring, layout, little wobble there, but it was very high. Stag handstand, she lowers down. The judges need to see the gymnast not only working in full point on top of the beam, they need to see full turns. They need to see the gymnast working down low on the beam. Swing through layout, nicely done. Another one, beautiful combination.
And steady.
I think she could use a little more amplitude in her leaps. She's getting by with them, but she needs to be a little more explosive and perhaps shoot for a little more air time. Oh, that's a nice combination. A split leap to a punch front 1.5 dismount. That's a mixed series, one of the things the judges are looking for.
Something else I think Margaret could work on is probably her smile and her upper body posture. She had her mouth open throughout and very focused and concentrated, when she really should show a little bit more presence to the judges.
This is a really original dismount, a split leap right to a punch front 1.5. I like that. She showed good spirit and good originality with that move.
And difficulty. That's hard to do.
Yeah, this is hard. Split leap, boom, punch front 1.5. Good job. She had lots of trouble on the landing, but a really unique idea.
.96 a score for Margaret Hewlett on the balance beam. Now Carol Ulrich will try to better that mark. Carol's very proud to have received the perfect 10 you just saw on your television screen in a high school meet here in Colorado. She received several after the first.
Now she has very pretty leaps and a nice combination right off the bat of gymnastic elements. Flip-flop layout, good job fighting it.
I'll tell you what I do like about her up there. She's very tight. I mean, the legs are straight and strong. The toes are pointed.
It counts for a lot, that terrific leg extension, as you mentioned, in terms of just overall impression. Once she's fulfilled all the requirements, like she did the full turn, she's showing work low on the beam, she's showing gymnastics series, a mixed series, as she did earlier, a round off to a split leap. You're right, it's those little things that make the difference. Look at the tremendous extension on the switch leg split leap. Oh, she was short on that layout, and I thought she could have stayed on. I don't know what happened there.
I agree. I think she could have fought that.
It's hard to say. Maybe we'll see it from a different angle later, but I'm not really sure what happened there. She was short. Round off, double full. Good dismount. It's a shame she had trouble there because that was going beautifully, and she knows it.
You can see the expression on her face. Oh, she's disappointed. I mean, despite the difficulty that she's having, I'm very impressed with her.
And she has some really good elements. Back handspring to a layout. Good fight as she keeps in balance. I wonder if she let down a little bit. The routine was going so beautiful. This is the only trick at the end she had to worry about. I don't know what happened there. She was a little short on rotation. She did her best to fight it, but no way she could stay on. She finished with a good round off to a double full. It's too bad she had trouble there because it was going beautifully.
And the score she receives is 8.95. When you add 5/10 for the fall, she'd be up to the 9.45 range. She's really a strong performer and shouldn't be crying at all. She's a strong gymnast. Right now, 8.95 for Carol Ulrich on the balance beam. Now we are ready to move back to the men's competition. You are looking at Jorge Garcia. He is ready to vault. Again, the men only vault once.
Yeah, men's vaulting, it's one shot. You got to do it. Here we go. Handspring, pike front. Oh, he was in really good position. He had good height, good distance. I think he just misjudged the landing.
Jorge Garcia currently is on top.
This is important to notice here. This is a blind landing. You don't see the floor until right when your feet just about make contact. It's a very difficult vault to really spot the landing on. When you're flipping backward, you can see the landing much earlier, but you'll notice he doesn't see the landing. Let's spot it. He goes over twice right there. As his feet pass in front of him, he won't even see the landing until they're just about on the ground.
The score is being posted for Jorge Garcia, 8.7.
Jorge Garcia receives an 8.70. Now remember, the edge that he has over Kyle Lozano is 1.20. If Kyle Lozano can throw a stronger vault, he can narrow that gap considerably.
Pretty good job.
Except for sloppy feet. The feet were apart and toes weren't, were kind of flexed. Clean up the form a little bit, and he's a strong vaulter.
That'll certainly keep him in the running in this competition. You'll see what he does here. He does a round off on. This vault is actually called a kasamatsu. He does a good job at fighting the landing. It's sort of a piked position. It wasn't quite laid out. I think he was trying to do it laid out. But as you mentioned, the body positions weren't really precise.
No, that's kind. His legs were apart and the toes were flexed. But he does narrow the gap between himself and Jorge Garcia. 9.15 for Kyle Lozano. Jorge Garcia only had an 8.70. Things are getting closer. Welcome back. We are ready to move now into the final rotation for the women's competition. Margaret Hewlett leads Carol Ulrich 28.65 to 27.425, a difference of 1.225. Very tough to do with one rotation remaining. Now the men have two apparatus remaining. Kyle Asano still trails Jorge Garcia, but it's very close at 0.75, and with two rotations left, that's an attainable goal. Kyle Asano will be up first on the parallel bars.
Glide kip, reverse straddle, drop peach, Stutz handstand. He's having a little trouble. That was kind of a neat move. Using a little originality on that
leg cut turn.
Leg cut turn, that's exactly what I would have called it. Good job.
Can we call that a Riley now since I named it?
Oh, nice high pike double dismount. Certainly that was the best part of the exercise, the ending. He had a little trouble early on. He showed some of the requirements. Of course, the judges are looking for a swinging C part. They're also encouraging the gymnast to do more underbar work. He does a glide kip reverse straddle. This is a peach. Peach to a handstand. That is an underbar requirement. The judges need to see an element of at least B value, the medium range value, that goes to or from a hang. And right here he does that leg cut turn, which I guess if he competes internationally, we'll have to call an Asano. This dismount was great, really nice high, and really flips over easily on a pike double back. Over rotates it a little, that's tough.
The score he received for that performance on the parallel bars was 9.20. Again, he trails by 0.75. So let's see what Jorge Garcia can do on the parallel bars.
Garcia's going to mount on the end as well. There's a glide. Swing to a handstand. All right. It's a nice element. See, he's really doing a lot of underbar work. As I mentioned, the judges are encouraging this as he shows some really interesting work on a giant, reverse heck to giant. Now he's having trouble with some of the easier elements, as we saw him have problems earlier. He can do a lot of big tricks. He's done 5 now major underswinging elements, which is a nice, unique way of approaching the parallel bars, although it was a really one-sided routine because all of his difficulty came from one style of skill, all underbar giant swing elements. He needs to show a more well-rounded exercise. Here, I guess you can see why he had trouble. He did a reverse stutz to a straddle cut. He was having trouble there. So what does he do? He kicks right back into his forte, which is the giant swing elements. You can see here, he does a giant down to a front uprise to the end, swing back, and a giant to a tuck double back. So it's a really interesting idea. I think he needs to show a more well-rounded exercise though.
I believe the judges agreed with you. Now this is going to make the scoring very interesting because Jorge Garcia received an 8.15 for that routine. Remember, Kyle Asano received a 9.20 and was trailing by 0.75. Going into the high bar, these two gymnasts are very, very close. But right now, let's move to the final event for the women. And you are looking at Carol Ulrich on the floor exercise.
Nice high tuck double. Double full punch front, oh, a little short, but that is a very difficult move. You don't see a lot of women do double full punch fronts, and she just about made it right.
She didn't take much of a break after that. She went right into that double stag handstand. Carol Ulrich from Broomfield, Colorado. Certainly has to be considered a favorite here.
Here's her last run. Double full. Nice finish.
So strong tumbler too.
She does a really high tuck double back. She actually opens up just a little early. You'll see she has to take a step forward, but she is airborne. The second tumbling run right here. Good speed. She's going to do round off back handspring to a double full. Now watch this. As soon as she lands, punch to a front. That is really tough on the old ankles.
And it was a little bit low, but she pulled it out.
Her last tumbling run, a double full.
Carol Ulrich scores
A little low there, you could tell she was running out of juice, but she did a good job at pulling the landing around and making a very strong finish.
And the score that the judges gave her for that routine, 9.25 for Carol Ulrich on the floor exercise. Her opponent, Margaret Hewlett, will face Brandy Johnson in the next rotation. Brandy Johnson, of course, the winner of program number 1, in case you did not see that. This is program number 2, a series of 11 shows here on ESPN. Margaret Hewlett will go up against Brandy Johnson. A rather percussive beginning.
Handspring, double twisting front. That was really unique. I've never seen that before. You've seen gymnasts do handspring full twisting fronts. There's a few that do 1.5 twists, but that was a really unique mount, a double twisting front out of a front handspring. Front step out through to a full. Now that was a weak tumbling run. She really needs to show more difficulty in that middle tumbling run. Although it was clean, the judges are really looking for the high-flying double flips or triple twists.
Do you think it was strategy on her part? Knowing pretty much that she has this sewn up and has Brandy Johnson waiting in the wings to challenge her?
It's possible, although I think that her tumbling is sort of one-directional. She's very good in front tumbling. She opened with a double twisting front. She dismounted with a 1.5 twisting front. But she probably needs work on her back tumbling. She has no real power in the takeoff for the double backs or the double fulls or the triple fulls.
This, by the way, is the final.
Watch this move here. This is really great, though, I have to admit. Handspring front, double twist, and she pulls it right around to a front head spring. She'll get points back for originality because that is really interesting stuff. Now right here, she's going to do front step out. She's a little low through this move. Round off back handspring full. She could beef that up if she could at least do a double full on that room and get more difficulty points back from the judges.
Her score outdistances Carol Ulrich 9.6 to 9.25. Margaret Hewlett will advance. Margaret Hewlett has defeated Carol Ulrich 38.25 to 36.675. So Margaret Hewlett will now face Brandy Johnson in the next rotation, in the next session. You'll have to watch for that in your listings for which show that will be. Kyle Lozano against Jorge Garcia. This is not over. After leading through 5 rotations, Jorge Garcia only received an 8.15 on his 5th apparatus. Now he goes into his 6th and final event with a 0.3 deficit. So Jorge Garcia has got to hit on the high bar if he's to defeat Kyle Lozano.
He said yesterday when we were talking to him that the high bar is his favorite event. He's more confident there, and it's very exciting for him. So he's going to need a good performance here today. Pirouette over the top. One-arm giant swing to a release move. Good work. Oh, a little trouble on the kip cast. He's a little sloppy. You can see he has good swing elements, but he doesn't quite yet have the polish. He'll get that as he gets a little older and a little more confident in competition. Triple back. Good dismount.
Well, he's dropped the gauntlet for Kyle Lozano. Again, he trails by 0.3.
This release move is really interesting because he does a one-arm turns backward and then does a front with a full and makes a good regrasp without breaking form, and that's a very complicated move out of a one-arm giant swing. Good speed here for the dismount. Really, he makes this very easily. Look at him crank those knees apart. That really increases your rotation. Let's look one more time. You can see he's good and high. He's really pulling. No problem on the triple back. He's going to be a fine young gymnast because he can do a lot of big tricks. When he polishes up his exercises a little bit, he's going to go places.
The number he received is 9.10. Kyle Lozano, who has a 0.3 edge, really needs an 8.8 to tie. Anything above that would give him the win.
Back up rise, stalled her. There's a reverse act. Oh, wow. He was way out there on his fingertips.
I didn't think he was going to catch that.
He's just a little cleaner than Jorge was here. He's doing similar level of difficulty. Just a little more polish. Good thing he hung on that reverse act and a really high, clean layout double back. That should do it for him.
Kyle Lozano with a fine performance on the horizontal bar.
If you wish to stick around for a few minutes, we'll give you the bracket leaders.
The reverse hacked, he really has good position here. He cranks it across the bar. He's just about as far out as you'll want to be, way out there on the end of his fingertips, which is very impressive, but it's also pretty hairy out there. Very high layout, double back, a little sloppy in the air, but of course we have the advantage of seeing it in slow motion where we can pick out those minor form breaks. It's very difficult to see those when you're moving that fast, but boy, he is up there in a really pretty position as he arches out the second flip. Good job for Kyle Lozano.
And that should easily net him a score higher than 8.8. That would probably be the good news. The bad news is he's going to have to face Lance Ringnold in the next session. Lance Ringnold, of course, one of the premier gymnasts. Again, you'll have to watch your cable listings to see who advances and what nights they'll be on. Kyle Lozano, 9.2. He's our winner. We'll be back with a recap after this. Through 4 events, Jorge Garcia led Kyle Lozano, but then when the rotation switched to parallel bars and high bar, Kyle Lozano took over and won. Lozano over Garcia, 53-4 to 53-0. On the women's side, Margaret Hewlett all the way over Carol Ulrich, 38.25 to 36.675. And right now, Bart Connors with our winners.
Well, good opening rounds for both Kyle and Margaret. You had a good start right on the vault, started out with a 9.8. That had to feel good.
Yes, it did, and it was one of my highest scores on vault.
What do you feel about being in with the big girls now? I know you're on the junior team, but this is the big leagues. How do you like that?
I think it's a good advantage for me to go up against them now, so in the future I'll be ready.
Speaking of the big leagues, you draw next Brandy Johnson. That's going to be tough.
Yes, I'll just have to concentrate on what I'm doing and go for it all, and don't hold back.
Well, lots of luck to you.
Thank you.
And Kyle, you had a good opening round. You got to go against Lance Ringnold next round. How do you feel about that?
Well, I feel nervous about that, and it's just a good challenge for me.
When you look back at your performance today, what was the best aspect in your mind?
Probably just hitting and just like being relaxed and just staying on. That's about it.
Well, I know you have a good future. Good luck against Lance.
Thank you.
Leandra?
Thank you very much, Bart Connor. Again, our congratulations to our winners, Kyle Lozano and Margaret Hewlett. We'll be back with more after this. From our beginning field of 24 gymnasts, we are now down to 20. 10 men remain. Kyle Lozano has now defeated Jorge Garcia. He will face Lance Ringnold later this summer. On the women's side, it was Margaret Hewlett over Carol Ulrich. She will now face, Margaret Hewlett that is, will face Brandy Johnson, as there are now just 10 women remaining in this 1989 U.S. Gymnastics Challenge. Bart?
Margaret had a terrific start. She got a 9.8 on vault, 2 9.6s both on the beam and the floor. She'll have to have the meat of her life, however, though, to give a strong challenge to Brandy Johnson. Kyle Lozano did a good job. He was a little inconsistent. He had some trouble on some of the events with the sloppy form, but Lance Ringnold is the hot guy, and I'm sure he'll enjoy the experience of competing against America's best in this head-to-head competition.
All right, again, a reminder that you can watch gymnastics here all summer long on ESPN. Next week, it's Conrad Vorsinger against Brad Hayashi, and then it's Lisa Panzeroni against Elizabeth Crandall. For Bart Connor, I'm Leandra Riley. So long, everyone, from the Denver Coliseum.